Mesquite Weekly for inviting me here today so I can express some of my experience in Mesquite and tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Karen Fielding. I've been a Mesquite resident for 23 years. I'm not one of the good old boys. I have made my own decisions to live here. I've lived, worked, raised my kids here, been very independent, been a single mom for 12 years, and it's been an honor actually to raise my kids in this community, being a single mom. And when they say it does take a village, it does take a village, because I believe that this community has helped me raise my kids and form them into the young, superior, great kids that they are today. So I have been here 23 years. I've been involved in the community separate different levels. I do want to tell you that my most passionate was the Chamber of Commerce as a board member from 2007 to 2012. I was on the board. I was the president in 2010, and it was quite an honor at the end of 2010 that the board members unanimously voted me in to be the president again for 2011. They'd felt the camaraderie that I had built, we had built as a team and a board, that we wanted to keep it consistent. The membership was increasing. And you know, what I do is I walk around business to business and I meet people, shake their hands, and try to help their businesses. And that's part of my business development and in Mesquite. My kids are involved in the community as well. Another organization that I love and adore is the Golf for Kids golf tournament. 5 years ago, I went into the board and I asked them, hey, do you need any help and assistance? And they were like, yes. So I help without the Golf for Kids golf tournament. And in return, that is just self-rewarding to see the tournament on the day of, and the contribution that this community has given back to the community, which is phenomenal. And it's not even a local event anymore. People come from Vegas and St. George and all over to participate in that. So that's phenomenal that I get to be part of that. And so another organization that I was on was the Mesquite. I was the vice president of the Mesquite, I'm sorry, not the Mesquite, the Miss Nevada organization. So I love empowering young women. My daughter was in the pageant and for scholarship money, and it's a great organization to be involved with. I did step down as the vice president of an organization when my daughter was in the pageant. It is self-esteem building to be in a pageant like that, and in return it is scholarship money. So to put our future, our kids' education, which is phenomenal. I'm currently on the membership committee of the Chamber of Commerce, so I do attend a lot of the membership ribbon cuttings and events. I wear several different hats, although I do have a huge passion for the Chamber of Commerce. I do real estate, and so I understand the need for growth in Mesquite. I've been being a resident of 23 years. I am a real estate professional now. I understand the need for growth, for affordable housing where families can grow. I've also been on the Mesquite Advisory Transportation Committee, where we looked at where there are going to be signs and signals and the fluency of traffic around town. And you know, we're 9 people away from 22,000, and so we have to start thinking about the roads and the safety on the roads. I'm also a big supporter of public safety, and I'm sure we'll get into that later. So about Karen Fielding, 23 years experience. I have ties to the community. And this region. I'm familiar with where we were and where I'd like to see it go. So with that, that's a little bit about myself.
Your experience with the Chamber of Commerce, okay. I don't know, you might want to elaborate on the skills levels that you obtained and the ability to deal with complex situations, which you can bring to the City Council.
Let me just tell you about my involvement with the Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, I don't take any personal accolades to myself. It is a chamber board, and there are boards. And I believe there is no I in team, that it is a team. So being involved with the Chamber of Commerce on a board level and then as the president, we would have situations that were tough to deal with. I'm a people kind of person. And you know what? I go out and ask those hard questions. What can we do for you? And I take it back to the board. And as a board, we figure out the best way to handle a situation. I don't make any snap decisions. I never have. There's always two sides to the coin, and I'd like to see everybody's side. Sometimes they're not easy situations, but we've always learned to handle them in the best way for the chamber. And I do that in my personal life as well. Never make any snap decisions. There's two sides, and that's the way I've always been.
In one of your ads, you've mentioned that you want to promote business and industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about that when you become a city council member as to how you would go about doing that?
That's a great question. So I don't think that that's something that I can address personally. I think it's going to be the city council and the board and the committee heads. We're going to work on that together. I think that Mesquite is in a premier location, being on I-15. I think 118 exit is a huge benefit for the city of Mesquite. The infrastructure's there. I think Mesquite is at a position where we can start attracting the big box stores or industry. I think we are going to see businesses in the next few years increase, want to move to Mesquite. And that's one of my passions, is watching Mesquite grow and seeing where we're not only going to be a destination for tourism, but people are going to want to bring their businesses here. And they're going to be so busy in St. George, it's going to be easier for them to come down 35 minutes to Mesquite, enjoy the sun and everything that we have to offer. So that's on the business development. I think that we're going to be in a great position to start attracting some more businesses.
There's another point that you seem to indicate in your ads, which is to help to retain locally owned businesses. Can you elaborate on that? As a city councilman, what would you do to help do that?
So I've seen so many businesses close in the last few years, good businesses, and I don't think that they have been out there, that the locals don't know that they're there. And last night was a prime example. There was a new business that the chamber hosted, a ribbon cutting, the Amused Owl. I posted on Facebook, a ribbon cutting, and the replies that I got were numerous. Where is it? Where is it? Oh my gosh. But I think we need to help some of the businesses locally owned and keep them here. And I think with more residents coming in, people finding out about Mesquite, that's going to help those locally. Now, summer months, businesses decrease. It's a proven fact. So how do we go ahead and keep those businesses in through the summer, and then where they can thrive when all the snowbirds come back in the winter as well? So I am huge for locally owned businesses, business retention. We got to focus on that because that's huge for Mesquite. And going a little bit farther in there, I think we have the great avenue in Mesquite with the RDA funds that the city offers. There are some restrictions and criteria that you have to meet, and I've worked on that a little bit, talked a little bit with Aaron Baker with the city, and finding out a little bit more about that. I've met with some of the business owners down Mesquite Boulevard. People have often said, it looks like a ghost town down there. With this new library coming in, I think the city's on the right path to get more businesses down there. So that's going to be a huge focus as well, is the retaining locally businesses, is letting them know the funds that are available to help them.
You also mentioned that you have a concern for, as expressed, that you have a wanting to have strong public safety. Can you elaborate on that, please? Absolutely.
Thank you for asking. Public safety is huge in a small community. And a growing community to me. And when I talk about public safety, I'm talking about the first responders, the fire and rescue, and the police. We're at a position that I know the fire right now has an 8-minute response time. Police a little bit sooner, and sometimes 10 minutes, depending on the call and how many are on duty. First and foremost, I respect our first responders. I have met with Chief Andrus, and I feel, and I've seen him do amazing things in the short time as chief and the direction that he is going. Now, again, I've said he is in charge. He is the chief, but it takes everybody in that fire and rescue to make them so successful. I do feel that with the increased business, with the increased residents, with the workforce that we're going to be bringing into town, we need to make sure that our first responders are staffed adequately in the event there is a fire and a heart attack and or a rollover, that we have enough first responders to reply to all of those safety needs. Again, it's a proven fact. Our age in Mesquite average age is 54. So we want to make sure there's going to be more cardiac arrests, more stroke victims the older they get. So we want to make sure that we are ready for all of that, and that we are staffed. We have enough staff to do all that. And on top of that, we got to make sure that our critical care transports, that we have enough of them, and possibly 2 on every shift. So there would be 6. We have 3 right now. Chief Andrus is one, but he's not making calls right now. So we would need to train a few more of those. There are going to be some grants, if we get some grant money for that. So it actually won't be coming out of the city funds or budgets. If we get some grants for some of those trainings, it would be fabulous. So focusing on public safety is huge. And with public safety, I do want to say that we want to make sure when we train the paramedics and the fire and rescue that they stay here. So we have to entice them to stay here. So if it's pay, if it's education, if it's medical, we got to make sure we have all that. So all of our first responders, police included, want to stay here in Mesquite, and that's I'm a huge advocate for public safety. And on the police side, I did a ride along a few weeks ago on Friday the 13th of all days, and I did a day shift and a night shift, and that was eye-opening. How much our police do in the community, and I would like to educate the community on what they do and everything they do, because they just don't drive around and sit and wait for somebody. They are going all the time. And again, I've been in some of those situations on this ride along that I am in awe how much they do to provide public safety for the city of Mesquite. So I that's a little touch on public safety.
Okay, fair enough. I think I would want some more elaboration, but I think I'll use it in terms of a response that you provided to the Mesquite local news. And it was about attending city council meetings. You attended the city council meeting on Tuesday, and there were 2 items which I think you've addressed somewhat, is strong public safety, and one of the concerns was from the first response providers, especially the fire department providing ambulance services and transitory services, that constitutes 25% of the city budget. The federal funding has been cut severely. State funding is not forthcoming. And will you be a proponent of maybe enhancing revenues in order to continue to provide those services that our seniors need? Our demographics indicate that there's 67% of the voting age public in Mesquite is over 64. They will continue to need or increasingly need those services. So we have a choice to make: provide quality service, continue to do that, increasing the amount of service provided each year, and dipping further into the city revenues or generating revenues elsewhere. Can you elaborate on what a councilman, what avenues he would explore in order to do that?
And let me just understand that better. Are you talking about the residents in healthcare?
I'm talking about
the ambulance services.
I'm talking about the first respondents, that 25% of the city budget goes towards taking care of that. Medicare only reimburses a very small amount of each incident. And so the city has to absorb the rest of it.
That does. And so I think, and as I said before, Chief Andrus is on the right track. The interfacility transport needs to be restructured. There's definitely no debating that. And I think that he's on the right track. He did mention buying a box van versus the ambulance and putting the wear and tear on the ambulance. So I think the services will still be there. Once we do that, the first responders give quality service. There's no doubt about that. Again, with the first responders and the Medicare, they're still going to make sure that they get the best medical care they can when they're transporting them. However, I do want to say that our first responders got to come first as well, as so does the safety of the age of 67 and older, as you mentioned. And so what's going to happen is I think that our hospital here needs to take care of and service them as well. So they'll go right to our hospital. I do think that transports of the non-critical emergencies in the middle of the night need to cease and have the hospital take them. So then our first responders and our transport can take them in the morning. And the reason I say that is because we have firemen and EMS workers, our first responders, who work all day and sometimes into the night. And so it's a safety issue for the patient and the drivers and the EMS workers driving down there in the middle of the night to go ahead and come back if it's not critical. So I think that that's something they need to work with the hospital and get that relationship built back up, is my opinion on that.
Okay. Back to attending meetings. I know there are many issues that are discussed by the city council, city planning, city mayor, city budgets, that are not necessarily something you hear about in public. It takes a lot, and I know many of the council members have worked diligently and very hard, okay, to get familiar, to be familiar with all the things that take place. Okay, so it's tough, to balance career and city council activities because of the inordinate amount of work that both require. Can you maybe elaborate how you would balance that?
That's a great question. So I've been balancing it now. I'm working the Chamber of Commerce activities I do. And the best thing about being a real estate professional in the city of Mesquite is my schedule is not a schedule. I am so flexible. And as I said before, I'm invested in this community. I always have. So I'm everywhere as much as I can be. I'm learning what there is to learn. And boy, this has been, when you think you know everything, you find out something else, which is fabulous. I've had several aha moments like, wow, when people have talked to me and told me things and increased my knowledge, because I feel that knowledge is key. So I've been asking a lot of questions. So I don't think it's going to be struggle to do what I have a passion to do, and that's it. I have a passion for Mesquite and the community, so it's not going to be a struggle at all.
And any of the questions that the Mesquite local news asked you, and you provided answer?
Yes.
It's unfortunate that not able to provide all the answers.
Right.
There's limited space in
Right.
publishing.
I agree.
But you have an opportunity now to perhaps talk about any of these items and provide more information.
So one of the questions that the city, that the Mesquite Local News asked me was one of my expenses for the next few years. And this is what I've seen and what I feel we need to expand on. And first and foremost, I think the city of Mesquite City Council has an obligation to our community. So therefore, in the last few years, if you're familiar with this, there was a snowstorm and ice in the gorge that crippled the gorge from St. George to Mesquite. That left several people stranded. And then with that, it left several people stranded in Beaver Dam and in Mesquite. Had we had a generator over at the senior center to cook, someplace where we can facilitate all those people so they're not sleeping in their cars and making a mess around town. If there's an emergency preparation intact where we could have did something, so we would be in charge of that situation. Another thing that happened, it was NASCAR weekend a few years ago in March. They were traveling home and we had a power outage that was several hours. So a lot of people leaving the Speedway in Las Vegas were stranded thinking they'd get gas into Mesquite. Well, come to Mesquite and there's a power outage. There are no gas stations open. Again, we had people in trailers stuck with no gas to even get through the gorge to go to St. George. Another time would have been a fabulous time to have a generator over at the rec center, a generator over at the senior center, so there is access to food and shelter and bathrooms for everybody. I know a lot of times when we have power outages in Mesquite, a lot of people flock to the casinos because they have the generators. So that's one of the things that I think one of the expenses the city of Mesquite needs to do is maybe invest in an asset as simple as a generator so we can get all the Mesquite residents. And that's just not Mesquite, that was surrounding areas who were out of power. And it was a huge power outage. And I know that it didn't come on till probably 9 o'clock the next morning, and it really crippled Mesquite. So I think we need to be prepared for situations like that again. So one of my top things that I did not mention was a generator in there. And so that's that. I do feel that, so the lights over at the ball fields, changing them to LED is going to save a lot of money for the city of Mesquite. So I think that is huge as well. And sports complexes. I didn't touch on that much, but I know from my point of view from real estate, being a real estate professional, I have to spend money to get money back. And I think the city might need to spend some money to in return get revenue back. So I think that's huge, and that will bring and attract a lot of people to Mesquite.
May I get a little bit more elaboration? As a city councilman, you have a fiscal responsibility, and how would you assure that I suppose the spending for LED light replacement actually has an economic life, or in other words, is economically beneficial?
Oh, I'm sorry. So it is economical beneficial, and that's why everybody wants to switch to LED lights, because they last longer. Yeah. They might be a little bit more expensive, but they last longer, and you don't have to replace them.
Do we know what the payback is in terms of
I do not, and you know what? I do not, and I can't answer that without knowing the exact number that would save. Okay. That is, thank you for asking that.
That's fair. Addresses things like what will you do, when will you do it, and how it will be done when you're elected to the city council. Like I said, it's a tall order. Okay?
I know that is.
The question is a tall order.
Yes.
Don't, be intimidated by it, but, give it a shot, okay? And just no perfect answer here.
I know. I would just prefer to do some closing instead of something.
Because like I said, that's also fair.
So in closing, I would like to just remind you that I do have ties to the region. I feel that is an asset for me to sit on city council. I have made some differences in Mesquite and some changes, and I feel that I would be your best choice for Mesquite City Council. I do feel that it's not about me, Karen Fielding. It's not about it is about a team. It's a team of council members. And within that team, they can make those choices. And like I said before, I mentioned, there's always two sides. I want to find out both sides before I vote. Also, knowledge is key. And if I don't know anything or information about something, boy, I'm the first one to investigate and find out.